I am so excited today to welcome my friend Kelsa to the podcast. And what I love about Kelsa is that not only is she one of the smartest people that I know when it comes to finances, but she's super creative about it. And she's not your typical in the box accountant or CPO or CPA. I don't even know the titles. You can tell what's out of the brain I normally use. But I want to talk to Kelsa today about how we can infuse more creativity in our life and have fun with our money, because I don't know about you, but so much of all of this budget culture type stuff can get really overwhelming and feel a little daunting. If you know anything about the personal finance world, you may have heard of somebody like Dave Ramsey, and Kelsa, I think, has a completely different view than somebody like Dave Ramsey in the best possible way. So, Kelsa, welcome inside the design studio.
Thanks, David. It's so good to be here to talk about creativity and money together. I can't believe it, but we're gonna do it. I know it. I'm excited.
I know. I love having our conversations because you always bring such like insight, and also you're not worried about trying to do things the way that they've always been done. Yet you always base your answers in fact and reality and research. So it's not like you're just coming up with things out of the blue. They actually are really sound pieces of advice. Give me and our listeners an idea of how did you even come to be interested in finances? Because I know that your background, you didn't come from a family that kind of supported you in that way.
No, yeah, I actually feel like I came into this work because of what I experienced and witnessed growing up, but in a bad way. So my mom, when I was in middle school, filed bankruptcy. And of course, as a middle schooler, I didn't know what bankruptcy was. I didn't know what that meant. All I knew was that it was a really stressful time of her life. And I remember sitting on the couch and somebody knocked on the door and my mom opened the door, and it was my aunt who lived nearby, my mom's sister. And my aunt came in, and I remember them hugging, and my mom was crying and just saying to my aunt, like, I had to file bankruptcy, and like my aunt just kind of like calming her and saying, like, it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. And so at the time and really growing up, like my mom had a really good job. She worked really hard. She was a really good person. She tried so hard to make good financial decisions. She would sit at our dining room table for hours sometimes. And I just have this very vivid memory of her sitting at the dining room table. There was a stack of papers that was like opened mail, and then there was a stack of unopened mail. And then she was sitting there with like a legal pad and a pen and her calculator, just trying to figure it out, and feeling so conflicted and full of despair. I remember seeing despair on her face, and just thinking like there's got to be a better way. Why is this so hard for somebody like her? And my mom now, I mean, that was a long time ago, but she's retired now and doing very well financially in retirement. I like people to know that, because it wasn't the saving for the future. She had money automatically deducted from her paycheck. So she was investing into a 401k at her work and like those types of things. It was the money here and now. She was a single mom raising three girls, trying to give us the things that we wanted to make our life better and fulfilling. And also just being like, but how do I make my car payment next week? Right. Like it was that type of thing. When I was a senior in high school, a recruiter came to our school and said, like, what do you want to do when you're older? And I said, I want to help people with their money. And he said, you should become a financial advisor. So I went to school, got a degree in finance, became fully licensed. I actually hated my accounting classes in college. So I know you were talking about like she's not like a typical CPA. And I always tell people, when you're in college or you're learning about money, it's very much through the lens of like, what's the right answer? And there's one right answer because the teacher, the professor needs to grade everybody fairly. But one thing with accounting and the real world application of accounting is that it's actually a very creative process, that there's probably 10 ways to do any one thing, right? And so if you give 10 accountants one person's tax return, they can analyze it in a bunch of different ways. But in school, that's not how it's taught, right? It's taught in a very linear, right or wrong fashion. And I really struggled with it in college, but I loved my finance classes. And so I became a financial advisor, did that for 3 years. But when a client would come in who was struggling with debt, or those types of issues, versus the clients who came in that were like doing well financially, so they were considered wealthy, and they were like, okay, I got to buy a new car, which account do I get it out of, and like how do we change your asset allocation to make this the best decision? Like that was so boring to me. But the clients who came in that were like, I've got debt, help me get out of it, I was like, yes, let's roll up our sleeves, let's do this is going to be fun, that kind of thing. But as a financial advisor, I wasn't getting paid to help those individuals, you know? So that was when Fiscal Fitness was born shortly after that, where I really decided that instead of having all of these licenses and looking at investments and risk tolerance and insurance products and that sort of thing, and really like the long-term planning, which I do think is very necessary too. So this is not to throw shade at that. It's very needed. But really the part of money that I wanted to help with was the very practical day to day, the money coming in out of your checking account. How do you know if you're doing the right things with it? What are the right things to do for you? All of that. And at the time, you know, really Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman, these were the people who existed in the space. So of course, when I first started, that's sort of like who I looked to. But very quickly, and I mean within the first 5 clients I had doing this work, I started venturing off of that path that they were on, you know, and really seeing just the nuance in different people's lives and situations and skill sets and even goals, right? So I would have some clients that wanted to get out of debt really quickly and they were willing to do whatever it took to get out of debt, right? They would sacrifice, just like Dave Ramsey sort of preaches. And then I would have other clients that were like, if you tell me that's the only way to do this, then I'm just not going to do it. So we got to come up with a different plan. And we would come up with a strategy that would work for them. Maybe it would take 3 years, but we would optimize their situation in the process so that they felt really good about it. So it cost them the least amount of money so that they could make progress, but also feel good about the way they're living their life at the exact same time. And very quickly, I just started to see like, there is not just one right way to do this work. There is a lot of different ways to manage your money. There's so many different ways to get ahead financially. And to me, money is a very creative endeavor of like, how can we make it work for you in the way that's going to bring you the most fulfillment and that kind of thing. So that's essentially what I do now.
I love that. And it's really interesting because I didn't plan it this way, but my last episode was about binary thinking and why we tend to think things as good or bad or positive or negative. And it feels like the money and accounting world is very much based in that thinking. I mean, binary, it's like zeros and ones. It's like either or. Why do you think that a profession that is as creative as you've found it to be is rooted in such like old-fashioned thinking?
Okay, well, how much time do we have? Because we could go through like the patriarchy and how so much of this is built around that. And also, though, in the most simplest way, it's because people see it as just math. That because money has numbers that are attributed to it, it's easier to assume that, well, if it's just math, it makes it easy for people, right? But to me, it's the exact opposite, where the focus so heavily on mathematical calculations and things needing to balance. And here's the biggest thought that has, I think, caused the biggest issue in the world of personal finance. It is this thought that the best solution is the best one financially, that whatever looks best on the spreadsheet is the best decision, that is the right choice, right? And in my mind, that assumes that money is the most important factor that we're considering, not the person's health, not the person's time, not the person's future and goals and other priorities in life, right? Where in my mind, we have to weigh all of those things against each other. And there are lots of times where the best decision for the client is not the one that looks best on the spreadsheet, but it still looks good, right? Not only that, but if you think about this, and this is something that I've proven time and time again with working with as many people as I have, to me, the best solution is the one that the client feels most buy-in for. Because if I give you this spreadsheet and it projects out like, here's this plan and here's a strategy that will work for you, and this one looks the best on paper, right? Financially, this one's the best, but a client's not bought into it, it's not going to go that way. So it's actually not going to look that good at the end of the day. But the solution that on a spreadsheet maybe doesn't look the absolute best financially, but it gets them ahead and it still solves the goal or the problem that they're, after, and they're bought into it, it's going to go even better. They're going to be more creative. They're going to be a better problem solver. They're going to stay more committed, like all of those types of things. And it's actually going to look better. And no one's talking about it in that way because all people look at is just the math behind money because there's numbers attached to it.
Well, I think it's so interesting because, I mean, we make all these jokes as parents, I think, because Kelsa also has 2 children, similar ages to mine. And I don't know if you've experienced this in school but like there's different ways of looking at math. And I think our education system is a little bit better now about like looking at different learning styles and patterns and how you can learn how to add 2 + 2. You can do it visually, you can do it kinetically, you can do it like there's not just the traditional way of learning it. And I feel like the personal finance world maybe hasn't caught up to that yet, understanding that people need to approach learning about their money in a way that works for them, in a way that they can wrap their not only their brain around, because I think sometimes we can understand something intellectually and not fully internalize it. And it really has to come from like a gut feeling of like you're so internally connected with it for it to stick and become something that's a healthy part and a healthy habit in your life if you're making these choices about money. And it seems like the way you're approaching it is really looking at the individual and not what should be.
Yeah. And I would say, 16 years ago when Fiscal Fitness was born, I would get messages all the time from people that would say, you can't bring emotion into money. There's no feelings in personal finance, and like that kind of thing. And I'm happy to report that I think there has been a shift in that time. It's definitely still necessary that we go in that direction. There's more work to be done and like that kind of thing. But letting people know that there are many ways to do this money stuff right? And that there is not one way to manage your money that will work for everybody. We just have to find the way that will work for you. I always say that if I have 2 clients back to back, one session and then another, they could have the exact same goal. And the strategy we use for one client is the opposite of what we do for the next client. And that's not because I'm not good at what I do. That is actually because I'm very good at what I do, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there are different ways that we can pull. I'll give you just a really simple example. Some people love detail and they actually do better with a level of specificity with a financial plan that's like really detailed. So it's like they've got, very detailed to almost to the penny or almost to the dollar, I would say, plans mapped out of what they need to do. They actually love that, right? And then I have other clients who, if I were to give them that level of specificity, it would actually overwhelm their brain. They would find it too daunting. They wouldn't enjoy it. They wouldn't be able to even see it clearly. It would almost be like too much, right? And they do better with a lot less compartmentalization. We might have like a 3-bucket system versus like a 20-bucket system for this other client, right? Or we might have their goals might be more of like a feeling. This is another thing that a lot of times people think that if in order to have a financial goal, that it has to have a number attached to it. And I completely disagree with that. A financial goal can be a feeling. Like I want to end the week and feel as if I was really good with my money this week, that I feel proud of how I thought about my money this week, or like those types of things. It can absolutely be a feeling as well. Now, there are times where it can be a number, of course, but for those people who actually do better with big picture thinking, the more detail we get, the harder that whole process is going to be. And again, that then affects their buy-in. It affects their problem solving abilities and their creativity, like you're saying. And it's really just because we gave them a strategy that is not going to work for them.
Yeah. It's interesting that you're talking about this feeling that they have. And I've been learning a lot this past year, especially as you know about manifesting and making things happen. My woo comes out a lot. Anyway, a big part of manifesting, the idea is that when you can actually feel something really, truly, deeply inside is when it's true and when it becomes real. And so it feels like to me, what you're making people connect with is that feeling that is ultimately manifesting the financial health and wealth that they desire, not because it's a specific number per se, but because they've connected with the feeling that that number is going to give them, or that, the freedom that they have with a certain number of zeros, if it is that, in their bank account. And so it's an interesting thought that it's connecting to that deeper emotion inside of them and not just what you can see on the paper.
Yeah, I love that. And I will also say, just to bring a little bit of nuance to that conversation, I always joke that I'm like 50% aspirational and 50% practical. And the reality is, affirmations are important. The way we feel about our money and those types of things are important. And there's just really simple, practical things you can do with your money right away to have that proof that what you're doing is working, right? Whether that is cutting your expenses, increasing your income, feeling so many times a client will start. And of course, the initial month, right, can be pretty, we're looking at a lot of things. We're turning over every rock. We're sort of seeing like, what is happening here? Where can we optimize the most? And there are times where we look at something and we decide no changes are needed here. Everything is really, this is a strength that you have. You're doing this really well. And even just proving that, seeing that, and having that clarity, like we didn't make any changes. You're doing everything you've done for years, but instead of doubting yourself and thinking that what you've been doing isn't good enough, or you probably could do better, we're actually giving you the validation that like, actually, this I've been good at. This part of money I've been rocking, right? And so it's another area that maybe I can focus on and improve, but we actually can look at very specific financial strategies and really point to like, this one's actually, you're making a lot of money on this one, or this is a category you're actually spending a lot less than most people, or wow, you've really optimized this part of your life already.
I think that's really interesting. And it goes back to that whole idea of binary thinking. We tend to think of we're either good with money or bad with money on a whole. And I love that you're breaking it down and saying, actually, this part of your life, you're nailing it. Like really great. It doesn't mean that there aren't other parts that need some work or that we can focus on, but it's giving people nuance and balance in a conversation that doesn't typically have a lot of nuance. Because I know that like you're not the type of person to say that what you need to do is stop buying your $4 or $5 lattes at Starbucks and that's how you're going to get out of debt. So because that's a very, I think in the zeitgeist of personal finances, that's a very simplistic way of looking at how do you manage your money and how do you take control of your finances. For somebody who has felt shame because they've not been able to do that, because maybe that latte is really what helps them get through the day. Like that, like ritual is something they need in their life. And the idea of giving it up is actually feels more challenging than saving $4 somewhere else. What advice do you give to them, or where do you start them?
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. And this is one of those things where it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Because are people saying, here's how you curb your spending and that kind of thing, because they know people are concerned with their expenses and how they're spending their money? Or in general, are people consumed by the thought of their spending and am I overspending and like the expense side of things because of all these messages that exist in the world around trimming expenses? And again, a perfect example, David, of who decided that spending the least amount of money possible was the right strategy, right? Like, I really don't know where that came from. And I have so many clients where it's like, we'll have a week or two where I say, here's your money, go spend it however you want. You don't have to track it. You don't have to like keep receipts. And they come into their next coaching session, let's say it's 2 weeks later, and they're like, okay, so I know you said don't track it, but I really want to be able to show you where this money went. And I'll say, did you go over the amount that you had allotted? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then it doesn't matter. It really does not matter. If you want to buy that coffee and that gives you something, if it gives you that boost to your day, or if you sort of enjoy it, right? Grant yourself permission to let that go. And as soon as you do that, it then frees us up to focus on something else that we can be focusing on, right? When it comes to your money, we have an exercise that we do with our clients. It's called the financial wheel of life. And we look at 18 different parts of your money. Okay. So different areas, whether it's long-term versus short-term, it's your family finances versus your individual finances, like your business finances versus your personal finances if you own a business, and those types of things. And we score your satisfaction and confidence in each one of those 18 areas in order to figure out which one should we be focusing our attention on, because it's not always expenses and it's not always spending. And yet I will also say that so many people, when they first come to me, one of the things I hear all the time is, oh, I'm sure I'm spending too much, or no, I should do better with my spending. And then when we look at it, sometimes they are overspending and sometimes they're not, but it's not always the case, right? The reality is too, is most people, if you were to ask them, how much did you spend on groceries in the past week? Or how much in the past month did you spend on coffee? They don't actually know the answer to that often. It's not a number. They might give you a range. They might have a guess or an estimate, but they can't actually tell you. So keep in mind what I just said, David, is most people don't know what they're actually spending, yet they've convinced themselves that they're not doing good enough and they could do better. Right. So there's a disconnect there that for whatever reason, we're told that we shouldn't be spending money on the things that actually make our life a little bit better, you
Right.
know? And my thing is like, if that's every client's a little different. So there might be some clients who really do want to hunker down and get their spending under control and that sort of thing. Other ones, it's like, this is what you're going to spend. This is what you've been spending. Build a plan where that is easy to do, right? So maybe there's something else that we need to look at in order to make that more possible.
Why do you think this is a much bigger topic and kind of age-long thing, but there's always been so much shame around money. I think money and sex and politics have these sort of built-in stigmas to them, and we're not as open and honest about it as maybe is healthy. Why do you think people have these ideas about money and the way they spend it, and that they automatically go to this place of I'm not good at it, when sometimes even just flipping the switch and seeing where they actually are doing well helps unlock places where they can even do better?
Yeah, where does that come from? I think, especially in America, money is such a pervasive problem. It is so vast as far as the number of people who would describe themselves as having financial stress or living paycheck to paycheck and those types of things. And studies show, and I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, I could pull them up because I have a presentation where I share these statistics, but a lot of people hear that, 80% of people live paycheck to paycheck in America. What is often glossed over or people aren't aware of is that it's like 40 some percent, I want to say it's 46 or 48% of high income earners would also describe themselves as living paycheck to paycheck. And then 38% of super earners. So people and super earners are described as people who earn more than $250,000 of income per year or more. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Even 1/3 of those people would say that they are living paycheck to paycheck, that they have financial stress. Okay. So this is a pervasive problem, and it is not a broke people problem. I always like to make that known, that just because you are struggling financially does not mean that you are broke. Okay. But because it's such a pervasive problem, I think no one's talking about it, right? Like people aren't sharing with their friends and that sort of thing. And that makes the problem bigger or worse for longer, right? Which is, I do think one of the benefits of sort of online and social media and like that type of thing is we do have better awareness now of how unique our world is and also how much we have in common, And I do think there's a lot more talk now where people are sharing their numbers more openly. You can see that there is still a conversation shift that needs to happen because there's still a hyper focus on spending as opposed to driving income or aligning your spending with your values versus just, trying to spend as little as possible sort of thing. There's a hyper focus on frugality, I think stresses people out because you can only live in that way for so long. So you can only sacrifice for so long. You can only track pennies for so long and that kind of thing. And then it's a natural thing that we can't adopt that hyper focus for our lifetime. So then when we stop, we immediately internalize it and say, I know I'm supposed to do it that way, but because I can't do it that way, or I've like exhausted that way of doing it, something must be wrong with me. So I'm bad with money kind of thing.
Yeah.
When this all plays together, this entire conversation, I think, David, the more binary talk there is about money, the greater that encourages the internalization that people experience when they're not doing it exactly the way the world is saying you're supposed to manage your money, right? Like you're supposed to have a budget, right? You're supposed to track every penny. This is one of those sayings that has been going around forever and ever and ever, which is to be good with your money, you need to know where every dollar goes. I can honestly tell you, I do not know where every dollar of mine goes. I do not. And I am really good with my money. You do not have to know where every dollar goes in order to be good with your money. So then when people don't know where every dollar goes, they think, well, so I'm not good with money. It's like the messaging around money is perpetuating the problem people are experiencing. Then the problem people are experiencing and how they're internalizing it is then perpetuating the messaging, if that makes sense. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle.
Yeah. We work with clients whose income ranges greatly, but I would say many of our clients are in those super earner category. And I will say that the ideas that they have I should say negative ideas that they have about money are still there. And so those statistics that you're stating do not surprise me at all, because I'm constantly a little surprised by people not knowing like how much they can spend on a gown for their daughter's wedding, or kind of being surprised, or, oh, I couldn't possibly spend that on myself, when like maybe their husband's like, you should spend that and double. They're very unaware of sometimes even the value of money, but yet you look at maybe their jewelry or accessories or something like that, and you can tell that they're very willing to spend in other areas. And so I think there's a general unawareness that comes across as being maybe bad with money, and maybe it's just it is that binary thinking that's coming back to bite us.
I also think what you just said is a woman or a person coming in and trying to decide how much to spend on something, considering that a financial and mathematical decision is flawed, right? Like in her mind, her husband could tell her the number, right? And give her the answer, a mathematical answer, and say, here's exactly how much you can spend. That doesn't mean that she's going to have an easy time spending it, or that she's okay with that. And this is where bringing how we feel about ourselves and our experiences in the world and what we think about things into the conversation of money is essential. And like this idea that like don't bring emotions into money. Money is just math, or like that type of thing, is to me so damaging and so toxic, because then we're not giving people the tools of like, how do I think through this decision based on what is most important to me to determine the answer to the mathematical calculation.
Right. Okay, so I want to shift gears just a little bit, and then we'll come back to what you do as a business and how you help people and if people want to work with you. But the way we met was because we were both placed in a mastermind 2.5 years ago, which is so crazy that we've only known each other 2.5 years, but also that it's been 2.5 years. Both are kind of mind blowing to me, because I feel like you've been a part of my life forever now.
I totally agree.
And so Kelsa and I are part of a mastermind we now call the CEO Squad. There's 6 of us who are in very different professions. In fact, none of our professions overlap that much at all. Like there's 2 of you, you and Erica, kind of have some sort of financial parts to your business, but they're not the same at all. But what we have just gotten back a couple weeks ago from Kelsa's lovely lake house in Michigan, which we are now looking forward to every year going back. But she has really designed a life that she loves. You're from Michigan originally, but then are now based in Phoenix. And have decided to now kind of basically split your time between the desert and the lakes. Tell us about like, how did you go about, in big picture wise, thinking about how do I run 2 homes? Because for some people that feels like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. But for other people, that's a huge stretch. And obviously you didn't come from a background where that was normal. So how did you create, and were you creative about creating this life for yourself?
Great question. I would say I've always been the type of person who sort of challenges the status quo. So in the sense that whenever someone says like, you shouldn't do that or you can't do that, immediately my desire to do that perks up. Like, I don't know what it is, In that same regard, I wake up every morning and write. It is what I do. I share through my newsletter and through my blog and that type of thing, just content around money and our goals in life. And to me, the way money amplifies our life in really great ways, or it can make it really stressful if we're not feeling good about our money. So I get up every morning and I write. And so much of that is just an extension of my own life and the decisions that we're making and that sort of thing. And I remember we would go back to Michigan every summer on vacation to see my family. My family is still in Michigan. My husband's family is here in Phoenix. So every summer we would go back so I could see them. And I remember just going for a walk one night, and I was walking along the water. This is obviously, we're just renting like a VRBO or Airbnb or something. And walking along the water and just being like, I love it here. I feel like myself here. I feel grounded here. I feel expansive here. Like there's something about this place that feels like home. And yet Phoenix is also my home. I love living in Phoenix. I have my family here too. Or my husband's family. And I just thought, if only I could live in 2 places, because I love both of these places. And through my writing one day, I just sort of wrote like, why can't I? What would that look like if,
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that is one of the questions that I give my clients to think about is, it would be nice if what? Just finish that sentence. Sometimes we give we put so much pressure on ourselves to come up with the best goal, right? And we got to make it specific and measurable and timely and all these types of things, which there's a time and a place for that type of goal setting too. But sometimes it's like we just got to tap into a desire first and foremost. Like, what do I desire? It would be nice if what, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
I said, like, it would be nice if I had more time in Michigan to be with my family. So instead of them coming for a couple of nights and we all see each other, it's like, what if I was there for a few months at a time and all the cousins got to play together for a week at a time, you know, like those types of things. And the very first thing I really want to invite people to do is tap into your desires. So I call them like my goal tinglies. Whenever I start to get like little tinglies around like, what's going on? I'm having something that I'm thinking about or I'm pondering, and it's sort of like at the tip of my brain, if you will. Like there's something that I want to change up, or
Mm-hmm.
I want to make my life better in some way, or whatever the case may be. Like just tap into that. Don't ignore it. You don't have to have a solution. You don't have to have a plan yet. You don't have to have any of that. The first thing you got to do is just lean into it. Don't shy away from letting your mind and your heart sort of explore it. So that is the first thing
Yeah.
that I did is I just started, and I was sharing it in my emails and, you know, that kind of thing. And then I had said something to my husband about like, the more I think about this, the more this would feel amazing. And this is really what I want to do. Like, what do you think of that? And of course, I can't just make decisions on my own. I have a spouse. So, you know, getting him bought into that of like what this could look like and that sort of thing. And we became snowbirds living in two places at the age of 41. And I just remember thinking, like, who says you can't live in two places? Like, we both work from home. We have this life that we can be flexible. So let's make that happen for ourselves. And then
Yeah.
that's when we went into planning mode. So I would say it came down to challenging the status quo, tapping into my goal tinglies or your desires, right? And then continuing to explore that. And I will also say that there's times of my life where like those goal tinglies expire after a while, where it's like, you know
Yeah.
what? No, that was just a season. And yeah, that was fun to think about or dream about for a little while, but I don't actually really want that. You know, so
Yeah.
this was one of those things where I wanted it and it wasn't going away. And the more I thought about it, the more my desire grew.
It's so interesting. You can tell, or I can tell, that we are such a good group because we have so many commonalities. Because 2 podcast episodes ago, I did a whole episode on what if, asking yourself the question, what if? And you just totally validated.
Yes.
So what can happen when we ask ourselves what if? And you opened up a world of possibility. And I love that you made it happen, but then also had not only the financial resources, but the financial knowledge and education to make those decisions wisely. And I know those because you had those conversations about what do we do with our house in Phoenix, and like all of this kind of, you've been through a lot of house changes in the past couple of years.
Yeah. I will also say, David, really quickly though, like the practical side of what you asked, which is like, how did I go about like managing 2 homes? And this is where I really want to express this as clearly as I can. That if you are striving for more in your life, you're going to come up, you're going to bump up against times where you don't actually know how to do the thing that you want to do, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know how I was going to manage 2 homes. I don't want to paint this picture of like, I had it all figured out. I knew how to do this or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I do think the more you allow yourself to explore what's next and you achieve that level, what ends up happening is you learn how to trust yourself, right? So I have learned having 2 homes isn't where I started, right? And I've learned in my decision making that I can trust myself, that I don't assume too much risk, that I know how to make really good decisions that can move us forward financially and also temporarily be a cost and move us backwards, but in a smart way, right? And
Yeah.
I've learned to trust myself in that process. And managing 2 homes, you know, of course, I've got a couple of different spreadsheets and budgets, and I've had to learn how to like forward my mail back and forth during the year when we're doing this, and like little very practical things.
Yeah.
But you really learn as you go. And so I do think when it comes to money, people assume that everybody around them who does good things with their money knows how to do it when they go to do it. And that is not true. We sort of figure it out as we go, but that is why also like working with a professional, I think like I have seen so many different budgets. I have helped clients plan out and make really big decisions, like not decisions that I'm making, but decisions that they're making. And so I've seen so many different scenarios. I know what questions to ask. I know the different factors we probably need to consider. And not that that is perfect, but if we can figure out 80% of it before you launch, or if we can plan ahead for 80% of what your life is going to throw at you, the other 20% is so much easier to manage real time. You can juggle it,
Yeah.
you can handle it, you can react to it. Because right now, what's probably happening is people are reacting to 100% of their life financially, right? They're just
Hmm.
reacting all the time. So you can do that part. We just want to minimize how much you're doing it.
Yeah. It's a big thing about reacting and not respond, or responding and not reacting, because we can have, a knee jerk reaction, but that's not necessarily the best response. And so when you give yourself that level of stability, you can actually thoughtfully respond to opportunities or challenges and really make wise decisions based on what you want, not necessarily what society is telling you is the best thing.
Yeah, I mean, the more you align just your everyday decisions with money around your values and what's important to you through having these types of conversations, but also like setting up the way you manage your money to match sort of what you want out of life. The
Yeah.
more you do that, the easier it is to make big decisions because your value system and your priorities are like front and center on a regular basis. So it's not like you have to tap into those when you go to make a big decision. They're already front and center, which I do think also helps for
Yeah.
most people.
So the way you help people is you actually have two businesses. You have a financial coaching academy where you actually train people to help people with their money.
Mhm.
But the big part of your business is really helping people with their money, where you coach them and you're financial coaches. So tell us about Fiscal Fitness and how people can work with you, because I know that you are very selective and you only accept two clients right now a month, but people can get on their wait list and they can join your newsletter. And Kelsa's newsletter, let me just tell you, her stories are short and they have such an impact. Like they're always personal, and they really give you an insight into how somebody who is really truly living with creativity around their money really thinks. So I highly recommend that you sign up for a newsletter and get on the wait list if you want help with your finances. But tell us, what does Fiscal Fitness do and how can people work with you?
Yes, thank you. So you can go to fiscalfitnessphx.com. You can also just search Kelsa Dickey. That's a pretty unique name. So it's I usually pop up. But so Fiscal Fitness, we really meet with people one-on-one. It's very hands-on. We are going to be right there with you. We're going to look at everything with you. We're going to talk through decisions, both the decision you have for this Friday and also the decision you're trying to make for 6 months from now and 6 years from now. So we really do meet with our clients. It is a very all inclusive sort of approach to money where we're not just looking at your money, but we're looking at your goals in life and that kind of thing. And like David was saying, we really, because it is so hands on, we only can really work with 2 new clients per month because we want to give them the most and the best attention possible. And so you can go to fiscalfitnessphx.com. You can find the waitlist for that. And as soon as you sign up for the waitlist, there's a lot of information there. First of all, like how we help people and what we look at and that kind of thing. But then from there, once you add your name to the waitlist, you get some more information about exactly how we would help you, what to expect, what that process would look like. So it really is just a great step to take if you just want to learn a little bit more as well. But we meet with people one-on-one at Fiscal Fitness. It is, like I said, very hands-on private coaching. So it is all with you and your coach. It's not, group settings or anything like that. We really do want to sort of turn over every leaf. And it's all about like optimizing your current financial situation to align it with what you want for the future of your life. And then the Financial Coach Academy, just really quickly, like David was saying, that was really born out of a desire to change the way other financial professionals are talking about money, because I would want to hire a financial coach for my team. And damn it, I couldn't find anybody who would actually talk about feelings and emotions. It was all the very analytical number crunching side of things. And so I thought, I gotta change this. So now I actually mentor other financial coaches, financial advisors, accountants on how to have these types of conversations and how to look at money in a holistic way versus just a mathematical calculation.
I love that so much. And I love to, like, if somebody is listening to this and they are a financial professional and think, I really love how Kelsa is talking about money. The Financial Coaching Academy is amazing. And you do these incredible retreats. You're about to go to Ireland to do one of your yearly retreats. So it's fun and fiscally fit and all of the things.
Yes, thank you. I do. Yeah, I do think we bring, an air of the reason we manage money is because of the role it plays in our life based on what else is important to us. Like the
Right.
goal isn't just to make more money, although that is certainly one of the byproducts where, we want you to save more, spend less, like, drive your income higher, grow your wealth, all of those types of things. And the reason we want to do all of those things is so that you can focus on what's really important in life, right? That you can be
Yeah.
present with your kids. I think about the worst thing about growing up and witnessing my mom's journey with money was not that she filed bankruptcy. That actually, I think, was a saving grace for her in so many ways.
Yeah.
The worst part of it was knowing that there were so many times we were all together where she wasn't present in the moment because she was worried about, how am I going to make my car payment next week? Or we would be talking about softball coming up and she would be thinking in her head, I could tell at these meetings, like, oh my God, how am I going to pay for this season coming up? And like those types of things. And
Yeah.
that's really the number one goal with our clients, is figuring out what's most important to them and then managing your money so that you can, focus on those things even more.
I love that. And I love just having this conversation. We could keep going. I would love to have a whole conversation about how do you talk to your kids about money, because I think that's such a missing link in today's society and where there's so much misinformation, but we'll save that for another time. But thank you.
If I could leave one takeaway that I hope everybody has, just one, like if,
Please.
out of this whole conversation, I hope there was more than just one, but if there's one takeaway that I hope they have, is that there is a way for you to manage your money in a way that feels really great for you, that fits with your personality and your current skill set, and that feels amazing for you. We just have to find out what it is. We just have to discover it, but it exists. I absolutely, truly believe that.
And it's just like clothing. There's really no one size fits all.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Thank you so much for joining me inside the design studio. I love talking to you always, but it's so fun to have you on the podcast, and I'm glad you made the time to be with us today.
Thanks, David, for having me.